Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ready for Rome. This is our webinar about Rome and learning about how to get around. And we're very, very happy that you've decided to join us today. My name is Shelley Ruel, and I am the community manager here at Italia Pass. And I'm joined by my colleague, Lorianne Filon, and she's our Italia Pass Primo Italy Experience Specialist. And you'll learn a little bit more about Italia Pass as we go through our presentation today. But as an Italy experience specialist, Lorianne is the person who helps our members, our Italia Pass members, plan their itineraries and book lots of different activities, tours, and rail travel and various things with the Italia Pass membership. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about what is Italia Pass, because many of you are probably joining us today because you purchased rail tickets with Italia Rail. So we have a family of brands that are the Italia brands, starting with Italia Rail. We also have Italia Tours, Italia Drive, and Italia Hotels. And these brands have worked with millions of tourists exploring Italy since 1987. And then our CEO decided that he wanted to help his customers have the best trip to Italy ever. And so he created the Italia Pass program and brand. And so it's a membership program, and there's two different types of membership. There's an online community, which is what I'm the manager of, and you can join that community entirely for free. It's with travelers to Italy. You can ask questions there and interact with others who are coming to Italy. And then we also have the Italia Pass Primo, which is a benefits program. It costs $99, and you get $500 in value of the benefits that are included in the membership. Today, what we'll be covering in this webinar are these bullet points that I'll just go through quickly. And also, just as a reminder, we're going to be covering a lot of information in this half an hour. So if there's anything that you feel like you're missing, don't worry, because I'm going to send you a recording of this webinar in an email. It will be no later than tomorrow. I try to get it out as soon as possible, but you'll have it by tomorrow, because here in Rome, it's 6 p.m. So sometimes I don't get it out in the evening. We're going to talk about, first of all, most of you are going to probably arrive in Rome through FCO, which is the Fiumicino Airport. And we're going to talk about how you get into Rome proper, into the city from the airport. And then we're going to tell you a little bit about our special lounge that we have at Rome's main train station, Termini. And then talk a little bit about public transport, some fun stuff about eating out at restaurants, menus, and some of the local customs you may not know about so that you feel more prepared when you come. And then also, we're going to talk about how you can get a complimentary entry into the Colosseum and a $100 automatic refund for a Roman Vatican tour. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to avoid tourist traps, some of my favorite local tips. And then at the very end, we're going to open it up for a live Q&A. We'll open it up for 15 minutes using the Q&A function here in Zoom. But don't worry, if there's more questions and we can't cover them all in 15 minutes, what I do after is I write those out and I post those in our community, and you'll get a link to that. So don't worry, put your question in, and even if we don't get to it live, I will absolutely get your answer offline and then post it on our community. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague now to talk about arriving at the airport and getting into the city.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I apologize in advance. I'm a little sick, so I might mute myself if I'm ever coughing, but hopefully we'll be okay. So now that you've landed at FCO Airport, you have a few options to get to the center of Rome. So you see they're all indicated in the terminal in the middle of the slide here. The first option is to reach Roma Termini, which is the main station in Rome, by train. So there are two types of trains that you can take. The first one is the Leonardo Express, which is a direct train to the Termini station, and it costs $16 on Italia Rail. And the second one is a more local train that'll get you to the smaller stations in Rome. So those are Trastevere and Ostiense, and they're $10 on Italia Rail. So it really depends on where you're staying in Rome for the selection that you'll make on which train to take. Both trains are considered regional trains, so you do have to check in for them once you've gotten the tickets. If you've gotten them online on Italia Rail, all of the instructions are going to be in the email that you receive, so there's no worries about that. You just have to look out for the email where you receive your electronic tickets and the instructions to check in. Generally, we get a lot of questions on whether or not you should book these tickets ahead of time. I do recommend that you do so in advance, especially when you're traveling during the high season. But right now we're heading into the lower season. I still recommend making the booking ahead if you're able to, just to make sure that you have a space at the best departure time for you. And I also recommend booking a time that is at least 1 hour and 30 minutes to 2 hours after your landing, and to not book any train tickets that leave from the center of Rome. So you're arriving in FCO, and if you're going to take a train from the center of Rome to Florence or to any other cities, don't book that train before within 3 hours of your landing time. So always give yourself a 3 hour buffer before heading to another city from the center of Rome, just so that if you have any issues with your luggage at the airport, there's any delays, you're not, rushing or missing that train. The other options are taking a taxi. So you can take that outside the terminal. There's a fixed rate of 55 euros. And there's also a shuttle bus. Or you can book a private transfer with us, which can be great if there are more than two of you or you're a group, because we offer vans. So that's always a little bit more interesting than a taxi. And you can book that through Italia Tours on the website, or you can reach out to us, dedicated Italy experience specialists like myself, and we'll help you to book that. Now for rental car questions. So a question that comes up a lot is if you should be renting a car during your trip to Italy. The answer is that if you're only going to be visiting the main cities like Rome, Milan, Florence, Venice, I'd suggest not renting a car just because it's hard to navigate within these cities in a car. They have very strict traffic rules and regulations, and you can navigate between them by train very easily. The high-speed train is very manageable. So that's what I suggest. But if you're going to be visiting some of the more remote locations in Italy, like Tuscany or any other areas, then it could be a great option to have a car. And you could book that car through Italia Drive. Our members do get a $10 rebate on those bookings. And if you have any questions, again, you can let us know. Another perk of being a member is that you have access to the Italia Pass Lounge. Now, the lounge is not located in the airport. It's located in Roma Termini, which is the main train station in the center of Rome. So if you have some free time before or after boarding a train, or you're waiting on your hotel check-in time, you can relax in the lounge. We offer free Wi-Fi, free espresso, some refreshments, and also we offer free luggage storage. So let's say it's the end of your trip, and you're about to explore a little bit of Rome before catching your train. You just have to book your visit to the lounge. Let us know that you're coming, and we'll store your luggage for you. And our lounge hosts can also answer any questions that you have on Rome or on your train tickets. All you need to know again is that you need to book that trip to the lounge ahead of time. And that's all explained in your Primo welcome email, or you can reach out to us and we'll help you out. And now I'll hand it over to Shelley for some information on public transport within the city.
Okay, great, thanks. So public transport here in Rome is known as ATAC, that's the name of the company. And the public transport options that you have are buses, the metro, which is the underground subway. It's called metro, it's short for metropolitana. And there are two lines, so it's a very easy way to get around the city because there's line A and line B, and they only cross at one spot. They cross at Rome Termini, so that's where you can change lines. And then there are also a couple of streetcar trams as well as part of the system. Tickets are relatively inexpensive in terms of large European cities. They only cost €1.50, and they're time-limited tickets. So what that means is you don't have to worry about traveling through different zones of the city and the zones costing different amounts. Your ticket is good for all public transport within Rome, and it's good for 100 minutes. There's just one exception to that, and that is it's good for one ride on the metro. So what that means is once you go into the subway and you are within the subway station and you take a subway, once you take the subway car, you can even change A-B line. Once you exit that station, your ticket is no longer good for another subway ride within those 100 minutes. However, if you still have time left on the ticket, it's still good for the buses and the trams. So that's like the only exception. It's just good for one subway ride. One really convenient thing about the subway that Rome offers is that they do have a tap and go system at the turnstiles. So you can use any of your contactless payment methods, tap your debit or credit card, or even your smartphone if you have contactless payment through your smartphone. Just tap it on the reader on the turnstile when you enter the subway, and that will count as your ticket. Because it counts as your ticket, you have to have a separate payment method for each rider. So what that means is if you're going with different people, everybody's going to have their own card or their own, cell phone payment method. The reason being is that that counts as your ticket. So if you were to be asked by an inspector to show your ticket, which won't probably happen on the subway because you're required to actually pass through a turnstile. However, on the buses in Rome, you'll find that no one checks when you get on the bus. You don't, some other European cities, you have to actually go past the driver and check in. On our buses, no one's checking. You just get on the bus. And so if you have a ticket and it's the first ride that you're taking with that 100-minute ticket, you're going to want to validate it. There's little yellow boxes. You're going to stick the ticket in. It's going to spit it back out. And that's how the inspector can tell when you started your ride. So that's the only likely place you might be asked to show your ticket is on the buses. There are unlimited ride passes if you think you're going to be using a lot of public transport. Rome is a very walkable city, so I don't think tourists necessarily buy these passes, but it may be something you're interested in. If that's the case, I have more information for you about that in a resource list that I'm also going to send you the link to. I've linked to all the resources I'm talking about in this webinar, and it's in the community. So there's more information about that. If you're interested, you can look at that after. So the tickets, where do you buy tickets? So if you're not in the metro and you're doing the tap and go, you're not going to find ticket machines at the bus stops. Where you're going to need to get your ticket. And by the way, I put in quotes, biglietto. That's the way you say ticket here in Italian. So you can buy tickets at the machines. There are machines within the subway stations. Otherwise, if you're out in the city and you're going to take a bus, you're going to want to stop into a tobacconist, and that's called tabaccheria. And you can identify those easily because above the door, there's a little sign that has a T. Otherwise, at a newsstand, there are newsstands spread throughout the city, and you can buy a ticket there. And these are generally at a tabaccheria, you may be able to use your card. At newsstands, you may need cash. So it's always a good idea to carry just a small amount of cash around with you if you need to buy tickets or other small items. Last but not least, one thing I wanted to highlight is a very convenient bus for visitors to the city, which is bus 64. The reason it's really convenient is because it starts out at Termini Station, which is the main train station, and it crosses the entire historic center all the way over to the Vatican, and obviously back and forth. So it's really convenient for hitting all those big monuments and places you might want to see. At the same time, I want to also highlight bus 64 because of the fact that since it is such a popular bus with visitors and tourists, it can also be a target for pickpockets. And now I've been living in Rome for 23 years, and knock on wood, I have never been pickpocketed. And the reason for that is because I'm simply aware of my belongings. So I don't want you to worry that pickpockets are everywhere and be paranoid. At the same time, just be aware in crowded areas. So not just bus 64, which tends to be quite crowded, especially in high season, but any crowded tourist area. Trevi Fountain, the Spanish Steps, the Colosseum, anywhere tourists congregate and get into large groups is a good place to be aware of your belongings, because pickpockets will take advantage of crowds because, of course, if people are bumping, they won't feel if somebody's taking a wallet. And unfortunately, they're very, very skilled at what they do. And so you wouldn't necessarily know that they were taking a wallet. So it's easy to avoid, however. Don't be distracted. If you have a purse, kind of wear it across body bag. Men, with your wallets, don't keep them in your back pocket, keep them in your front pocket, maybe keep your hand on it while you're riding on the metro or in a crowded area. Some people ask about backpacks. You can wear your backpack on the front if you need to in a big crowd. So those are just good strategies to avoid pickpockets, but not to worry because they're easy to avoid if you look like you know what you're doing. There's plenty of distracted tourists who are much easier targets. Next, we get to talk about the fun stuff when you come to Rome and you get to eat all our delicious Roman food. And so I wanted to give you a couple of insider tips and just some local cultural customs so that you're aware of those when you're here. First thing about restaurants. So we do eat a little bit later than, let's say, North America, or at least the US and Canada. We eat lunch starting around 1 p.m., 1:30, and dinner around 8 to 8:30. The reason I tell you this is because if you're going to a restaurant and need to make a reservation, lots of restaurants will allow you to walk in, but if you're going to book a restaurant, they probably won't take bookings earlier than this, generally speaking. It doesn't mean you can't eat earlier than this. There are restaurants, but they're more geared towards tourists, perhaps, that maybe prefer to eat earlier. The local restaurants, these are the dinner and lunch times that you're going to want to kind of arrange your schedule around. I put here on the bullet point check. Check is il conto if you want to try your Italian. The reason I put check here is because a custom that I've found a lot of people asking me about when they come here to visit, why are they not bringing me my check? And there people will wait and wait for the check because, you know, oftentimes where I'm from in the US, your wait staff will just, when all the food has been delivered, they'll just put down the check and say, okay, I'll take this for you when you're ready. It's the exact opposite here. Generally speaking, the waiter or waitress will not bring your check unsolicited. You're going to have to ask. Now, the reason for that is a courtesy, because here it's a cultural custom to when you go out to eat, it's about spending time with your friends and family, and the waitstaff wants to respect that. They want to respect the fact that once you're at your table, that table is yours for the evening. Unless you're in a specific restaurant that tells you, look, we turn tables at 8:30 or, you know, whatever, and you need to, it's very rare though. Generally speaking, once you sit down, that table is yours for as long as you wish. And so if you're sitting there wondering, gosh, we need to go, we have an appointment, why aren't they bringing us our check? They're not inefficient. They're trying to respect the fact that you're spending time with your friends and family. So simply ask and they'll be happy to bring it. Tipping is a question we get a lot of, as a topic that we get a lot of questions about. You do not need to tip here in restaurants. The wait staff is paid a regular salary. They don't work on tips. So although it may feel very unusual for someone coming, say, for example, from the United States, where a 20% tip is kind of the norm, here, if you want, you can leave maybe €1 per person to show as a courtesy if you really enjoyed your meal. But generally speaking, we don't tip. Locals don't tip after their meals. And the same goes, people ask about taxis as well. Same goes for taxis. You can round up. Taxis now accept credit card payments as well, so there's no tip required there either. Next, a little primer about menus in the restaurants, because they're a little bit different perhaps than what you're used to. So first of all, I've put here ristorante, and then on the second bold bullet point, I put pizzeria and pizza al taglio. So our restaurants kind of divide in two directions. Ristorante is going to include your pasta and maybe meat and fish dishes. Not necessarily pizza. There may be pizza, there may not. If you want to make sure you're at a place where it serves pizza, then go to a pizzeria, and that way you'll be sure that they have pizza on the menu. So it kind of depends. Ristorante generally is going to have three main sections on the menu. So antipasto are going to be your appetizers. Primo are going to be your pasta and rice dishes like a risotto. And secondo is going to be the meat dishes, chicken, meat, fish. You don't have to order all the courses. They don't necessarily have to go in order. You could order from whatever you want, and your waitstaff might ask you, do you want me to bring her primo and his secondo together so you can eat at the same time? So, but just know that you can kind of pick and choose however you want. In terms of the pizzeria and pizza al taglio, so a pizzeria is a sit-down pizza restaurant. And so when you go to a sit-down pizza restaurant, first thing to know here in Rome, our Roman style pizza is a very thin crust. It's often a wood-fired pizza, very delicious, very thin, and everyone gets an individual pizza. It's as big as your plate. It's so thin that you'll probably be able to eat it all. So don't feel like it's gonna be this big pan pizza for yourself. But that's the style. That's how it'll arrive at your plate, on your plate, uncut. You're gonna cut it yourself. And the reason I put toppings there on the bullet point is because pizzas here are organized in terms of their toppings. You're going to pick the pizza topping combination on the menu that sounds the best to you. So you're not going to say, I want this topping and that topping and that topping. They have names. So like the cheese pizza is called margherita. You'll see on the menu. So just pick the topping combination that you like, and that's the pizza you'll order. And then the fritti, it means fried, basically in Italian. It's a tradition before you eat pizza to get appetizers, fried appetizers. And supplì is that little rice ball you see there in the bottom right corner. It's a Roman specialty, so it's only really available in Rome. So I recommend you do try it while you're here. It's also a great street food option. Nice little snack. It costs like €1 usually if you're walking around the city. It's a fried rice ball. So they take rice and it's got tomato meat sauce. It's got mozzarella in the middle. They bread it and they deep fry it. So it's a delicious snack. The Pizza al Taglio is the place where you're going to get pizza, like street food pizza. So as you're walking around the city, you'll see these little pizza shops. They have pizza behind a glass counter, and you're going to buy that pizza by weight. So when you go to those places, you're going to indicate how much you want. They'll kind of use their hands to show you like, how much do you want? And they'll cut it based on how much you want. They'll weigh it based on the price per that type of pizza. And then you'll pay for it, and they can either wrap it up in paper and you can eat it as you're walking, or they can put it in a little box for you. Generally speaking, it'll run you between 5 to 10 euros per person, depending on what kind of pizza you get. So those are all your pizza options and your restaurant options. Last but not least, let's talk about coffee, because of course Rome is home to some delicious espresso. If you want to be like a local, then go to the bar. The coffee bar is called Il Bar. And the way it works is you're going to go in and you're going to pay first at the register. And then you're going to take your receipt that you get from the register and you're going to go over to the barista over at the machine at the counter, and then you're going to tell them what you want and show them put your receipt on the counter. Make sure you have sharp elbows because it can get crowded, and push your way up to the front and order. Now, cafe in Italy does not mean like your American coffee. When you say cafe, they know it's espresso. So a coffee, if you say un caffè, you're going to get an espresso coffee. You can also say un espresso, but most Italians will just say un caffè because that's, of course, just an espresso. We drink cappuccino for breakfast. You've probably heard, or perhaps you've heard, that we don't drink cappuccino after lunchtime per se. We certainly don't drink it after meals. You can try to order it in a restaurant, but chances are they may not even have milk in the restaurant to make your cappuccino after dinner. So it's not really a tradition here to drink after a meal. We have espresso after dinner. The best places for espresso, I have put 2 of the most famous on my list of resources that I will have that on that link I'm going to send you afterwards. So next, I will pass it back over to Lorianne to tell you about some ways to get into these famous sites.
Thank you. So now for all the exciting sites you'll get to see while you're staying in Rome. So as a Primo member, you do get a free priority entrance of a value of $22, and that gives you access to the Colosseum, the Roman Forum, and Palatine Hill. And we offer other tours in Rome. One of those is we have many different guided tours of the Vatican. We have guided tours of the Colosseum. The ticket gives you access to enter it, but we do have guided tours that you can book as well, and we can credit that free ticket to these tours. What I recommend is if you're spending more than 2 days in Rome, we have something called the Rome Tour Pass, which includes 3 of the most comprehensive and best tours that we have in Rome. So one of the Colosseum, one of the Vatican, and an additional one, which is a walking tour of the rest of Rome, and it's a really great experience. If you choose one of these tours, you do, as a member, get $100 credit to spend on the first tour that you book, and then 10% off of any subsequent tours that you book with us. We also have tours of other areas in Italy that you can take a look at on our Italia Tours website. If you have any questions, you can also email us. What I recommend is booking these tours as soon as you have your dates, especially for the Vatican, any season, not only the high season, but also the low season. It does get booked up pretty fast, so don't count on last minute reservations. We also get frequent questions about the dress code. What's important to know is, as a general rule, if you'd like to visit the Vatican or any of the main basilicas or duomos in Italy, you need to wear clothes that will cover your shoulders and your knees. That's especially true at the Vatican. Other religious places in Italy can be a little bit more lenient, but for the Vatican, do respect that dress code. And you also won't be able to bring large backpacks, strollers, or anything really large into the Vatican. So what I generally advise is to bring a crossbody bag. That's usually better, or something smaller. It's more convenient for the tour. It's more convenient to move around in crowds. And now I'll leave it to Shelly to give you some more local tips.
Okay, great. So here I put together a couple of tips about some of the most common quote unquote tourist traps you might run into when you're here. So the first thing, when it comes to restaurants, a sure tip off to a restaurant that is geared for tourists and not for locals is if you see pictures on the menu. Another way to identify a kind of tourist target restaurant is if they're like I call it promoters. I don't really know what they're, just these people out in front kind of trying to usher a passersby, come and eat inside here. A real Roman restaurant worth its salt has no need to try to usher people in. People will come, the locals will come. So it doesn't mean that these are bad restaurants necessarily. You're not going to necessarily have a terrible meal. However, it's clear that these are the types of restaurants that are catering to tourists. So I generally advise people to avoid them only because when you're here, it's great to eat at some of the more local spots. And these restaurants you're going to encounter obviously in the main tourist areas. So probably around the Pantheon, Trevi Fountain, Spanish Steps, Colosseum, these types of places. Plenty of local restaurants to be had all throughout the city. Souvenir photos. So you see this photo in the upper middle. I took this photo on near Trastevere several years ago. I thought it was so funny. There's this guy dressed up as a gladiator with his Samsonite. And these are people who dress up as gladiators, and they go out in front of the Colosseum and they offer to take a photo with tourists. What some people don't know is that this is what they're trying to make money doing. So I suggest if you want to get a photo with the gladiator if they're there, I just suggest to people that you agree on a price before you snap that photo, because to avoid any unpleasant surprises afterwards if they demand some high amount of money. I've heard that they run about 10 euros each. I'm not sure. I've never really spoken to a gladiator. Should go down there and ask them, but just a tip if you do want to do that. It's a little bit of a tourist trap. Another one is you see this gentleman with the roses in the bottom right, especially in the evening in some of the really more popular nightlife areas like the Trastevere neighborhood. There's a lot of people who go around with these bunches of roses, and what they'll do is they'll kind of try to put it in your hand. They'll go, here, I have a gift for you. Well, of course it's not a gift. What they were trying to do is, like, once it's in your hand, I think they think that you're going to feel obligated to pay for it, because then they're going to, of course, demand however much they want for it. So it's easy to avoid. Just walk on by. They've got plenty of other distracted tourists. If you want to buy a rose, by all means, go for it. I don't know what the price is though, so it's buyer beware. There's plenty of beautiful flower stands all around the city. So if you're really wanting to get a flower, maybe you should check out one of those local spots instead. Next is gelato. I hope you're gonna love eating our delicious gelato. 2 tips to spot gelato that is kind of more touristy and not authentic necessarily. If you see gelato that looks like this picture, and I mean like just huge mounds coming out of these tubs, then clearly what they've done is they've whipped lots of air into it to make it look really showy and really impressive. However, that's not how a real artisanal gelataio would make the gelato. So it's to avoid, because there's plenty of other gelato shops that are more authentic. Another tip off that's not authentic, natural gelato is if it's a really bright color, because of course they're putting artificial colors in. Your local gelatai who make the gelato are not going to use anything artificial. They're going to use whatever natural ingredients that is for that flavor. And so that's obviously going to produce a less vibrant color maybe, but a more authentic product. And last but not least, here are a few of my local tips for you about Rome. So here in Rome, we have these water fountains you see in this photo. They're called nasoni, which means big noses, and that's because of these spigots that you see. There's thousands of them around the city. They run constantly, so you see the water coming out. They're just on all the time. The water comes from deep underground springs. It comes out ice cold. So you can refill your water bottles here. So you don't need to buy plastic water bottles. You've got water fountains all around the city. And in my list of resources, I have an app that actually will locate all these water fountains. So you can put it on your phone while you're visiting, and you can get your next water refill right on your phone and see where you're going to go. And a super local tip, if you want to look really local, is you can put your thumb in the bottom where that water is coming out, plug the spigot. There's a little hole on the top. And so what happens is the back pressure causes the water to come out through that little hole in the top. And it's specially designed. So if you don't have a bottle, you can actually lean down and drink like out of a water fountain. The only thing you need to be aware of is like when you go to spray that, that arc of water is going to shoot. So be aware of people walking by so you don't spray them with water. That's the only thing. The next tip I have for you is a lot of people don't make it necessarily to Villa Borghese, which is a beautiful outdoor local park that we have. And it has an overlook over Piazza del Popolo, where you can get some very beautiful photos on Pincho Terrace. And so I recommend you stop in there if you want to go a little bit off the beaten path. You can walk up the Spanish Steps. It's really just on the top there. You can rent a Risho bike. It's those bikes that are like big pedal bikes, but like with like a seat for two people to sit down in the front, kind of like square bikes. And you can rent those by the hour, pedal around the park. You could take a rowboat out on the lake. Like I show this picture here, that's the actual lake in Villa Borghese where you can rent a rowboat. So that's a lot of fun, kind of off the beaten path activity. Last but not least, an aperitivo. Maybe you guys have seen the aperitivo, like the Aperol Spritz is really popular. It's a pre-dinner tradition, so it's around 6:30-ish. You can go to these places and get an aperitivo. You can choose an alcoholic or non-alcoholic drink, and they serve snacks. At like a coffee bar, they have those in the evening, and you might just get potato chips and peanuts. But there's a place like this one in the photo, which I have on my resources list, where for like 10 euros, you can get this whole board of like lots of little snackies. And it's almost like you can make a dinner out of it. So that's kind of a fun thing to do before dinner. So last, I'm going to have Lorian talk to you about our Borgia Gallery.
Thank you. So last but not least, our newest member benefit is the access to the Borgia Gallery, which is one of the only places in the city where you can access the original ancient Rome street level. So it's a little bit underground. And during your visit to the gallery, you'll hear about the fascinating history of the Borgia family. You'll also get a unique look into what the Roman Renaissance looked like. Not to mention that your visit is paired with a wine tasting and an aperitivo, which Shelley just mentioned is a great way to experience the local food culture. And this is all led by our expert sommelier, and spaces are very limited. So once you know when you're coming to Rome, you can let us know and we'll check on availability for you. Just an update that this gallery will be closed for renovations to get it ready for the next season between November 25th and December 18th. We can add that probably in our sources and resources with Shelley, so you don't need to take that down. This is just to let you know that it may be closed if you're visiting at the end of November, early December. And this is only accessible to our members. So it's truly one of a kind experience. We get really, really amazing feedback from that. So I do recommend, if you're able to take advantage of it while you're on your trip.
Great. So that concludes the info part of our webinar. As I mentioned, you're going to get an email and it's going to have a link to the resources. It's going to have a recap of the Q&A that we're about to have right now. And you will also get a link to a recording of this webinar. So if you missed a slide or want to go back and listen to something again, you will have that. That will be most likely later on today, latest tomorrow. You can also visit our community at italiapass.com. Just click community, and then you go to the sidebar. You'll see Ready for Rome orientation under the Italy travel planning space. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we are going to go into the Q&A portion of our webinar. So if you see down at the bottom, there's a little icon Q&A. Just click on that if you have a question for us, and we will answer your questions for the next 15 minutes live. We'll try to get through as many as we can. And like I said before, if there's any that we are unable to get to in the 15 minutes, I just keep asking them, because Zoom will save them for me and I can answer them typing them, and I'll post them in the community. So we already have one question, and it says, is it impolite to take pictures with people you've enjoyed? For instance, we loved our experience with a particular server at a restaurant. Could we ask to take a picture with them? That's a great question. My parents have done that when they've come to visit. it wasn't in Rome, it was in Florence. Boy, they just loved this restaurant. They loved the waiter. They loved everything about it. And they took a picture. I don't think it's impolite. I think they actually would get a kick out of it because it's like, I think it makes them feel really like special and gratified that like their service has been so appreciated by their visitors. So I would say, why not? Go for it. Weather.
Yeah, that really depends on when you're visiting.
It really
Um,
does. So I'm assuming you're meaning weather right now. We're in fall, so we're in like the mid 60s Fahrenheit most days. It's been a little rainy, but yeah, I mean, just Google. That's the best way because fall weather it's variable. So, but it's certainly more pleasant than the summer. You can definitely walk around the city and not have to worry about heat exhaustion like in the summer.
Right. Should we book a guided tour of the Coliseum to see the arena level? So the tours of the most of the tours of the Coliseum will not include the arena level or the underground. That's something to know. It's very difficult to get those tickets. So most of the tours that you're going to encounter, including ours, won't include that. But you can see the arena level from where you are, and you do see a great deal of the Coliseum.
Okay, perfect. The next question says, are tap cards accepted for most everything, or do I need a lot of cash? Great question. So Rome has finally come into the 20th century. Contactless payments are accepted nearly everywhere, even for small purchases. I do recommend you carry a small amount of cash. So certainly not a lot of cash, a small amount of cash. And by small, I'd say, I don't know, 20-ish for small purchases. Everywhere else, you're going to find that they're going to take cards. Also, because there was a law recently passed, which kind of mandated even small businesses like the coffee bars, they're required by law to take cards now. They used to refuse a lot of them because of the service fees, because banks charge really high service fees to the businesses here for using cards, but now they have to. And that's been really convenient. So you'll find that you can easily get around with contactless payment or card payment.
Could you go over the validation of e-tickets for train travel? Yes. So if you book your tickets on Italia Rail, there are two types of trains in Italy. There are high-speed trains. First of all, it'll be written on your ticket and in your confirmation email. High-speed trains have assigned seating. When you book them, you can either choose your seating or it's automatically assigned, but they have assigned seating. And those do not need to be checked in for. You can just show up, sit at your assigned seating, show your ticket to the controller when they ask on board, but you don't need to validate them. The second type of ticket is a regional ticket, and it links the smaller areas of Italy in general. It does say regional on your ticket, and your confirmation email will have instructions on how to check in. You do need to check in ahead of time before boarding your train. Very important. Once you check in, you're all set. It's a check-in that's online. It's similar to how you would check in for your plane. And it's very straightforward. All the information is in your email that you receive with your e-tickets. Explain train strikes. I'll take this one too. So train strikes, yes, they're unpredictable, and we do have a little bit of a heads up beforehand. The thing to remember is that 95% of the time you get to your destination. The only thing that might happen is that your train is canceled and you're rebooked on site to get to your destination a bit later. But you do get there. And in the event that your train is canceled, you are refunded in full if it's canceled because of the strike. I never suggest to cancel your train before knowing if it's going to be canceled because of the strike, because you won't get a refund for this. So my advice, when there's a strike and you know it's happening, and we'll be in touch with you and explaining when it happens and how it happens, but to show up to the station ahead of time, an hour, 2 hours ahead of time, to have the time to kind of see if it's canceled and to be rebooked on a different train. That's all you need to know, but most of the time you do get to your destination.
Okay, the next question says, hi, what are options for local SIM cards at the airport? So in terms of local SIM cards at the airport, I don't know if there are cell phone shops that you can access and buy SIM cards. Nowadays, to be honest with you, I think a lot of travelers don't even buy a local SIM card anymore, just for the fact that Wi-Fi is so prevalent. And when you install messaging apps like WhatsApp, you can actually message and even video call with Wi-Fi. So I think a lot of people don't even buy local SIM cards anymore. However, Nicholas, on this question, I'm going to look that up for you. And I'll give you a couple of resources for where you can buy the local SIM cards. And I will put that in there's going to be a Q&A recap after the webinar. I'm going to send you that link in an email and you'll find the answer more specifically there. I'll go and research that for you after.
If we have train tickets from FCO to Roma and we're early, can we change our tickets? Yes. So the FCO to Rome trains are regional. So before you board, you can change the time of your ticket. And if you don't really know how to do that, you can also head to the booth there, the booking kiosk, and they'll help you out. You show them your reservation, they'll help you.
Okay, Sam asks, can you recommend a local fine dining restaurant for dinner and lunch in Rome? Okay, so when we get questions like this, I love to do more research rather than just coming up with something off the cuff, because I also have lots of local friends who work in travel. So a lot of times I pose these questions to them and then I post the answer, this more comprehensive answer than I can come up with on the spot in the Q&A recap. So Sam, I'm going to research this for you and give you some great options. So just hold tight. And as soon as I get the Q&A recap posted and you get that email, you'll have your answer there. Oh, you're on mute. It happens.
When you huff. Okay, so I arrived last week and I will be in Rome on Friday. Is there a luggage storage at the train station in Rome? Yes. So yes, the short answer is yes. So if you're a Primo member with us, you have access to the lounge in Roma Termini, and you can book ahead of time that lounge. All the booking information is in your welcome email when you become a Primo member with us. If you are not a member and you don't want to become a member, there are options that you can look into online that are obviously going to be, you have to pay for these options. One of them is called Stow Your Bags. We're not affiliated with them, but I know a few people have used them in different stations. It's less convenient than leaving them at the lounge, but there is that option, so you can look into that.
Okay, Deborah asks, most places do not take Discover, right? I don't see the Discover logo around, so I would assume that to be the case. I could look up and research that when I do the Q&A recap. If I come across any information about that, I'll add it in, but I would say generally probably not. I see Visa and MasterCard, and I do oftentimes see people sometimes specifying they don't take American Express, unfortunately. So if you have a MasterCard or Visa, those are the most prevalent options. I'll take the next one because it's on public transport. It says, I may have missed this, but can I use contactless payment to use the bus and metro instead of buying tickets? For example, can I just tap my phone at the ticket box on the bus? So you're right, we did cover this in the public transport. However, you've brought up a good point. Yes, on the metro for contactless tap and go, no on the bus. Some buses, you may find it. I wouldn't bank on it. So yes, in the metro and the subway, no on the bus. Take a paper ticket for the bus. There are some apps you can use to buy bus tickets. I will include that in the Q&A. If you feel adventurous and you want to download a local app to buy your tickets online, you can also do that. That's what I use when I travel on public transport.
I was looking into another of the questions we had. So how much time do you allow between train transfers? We're traveling from Milan to Rome airport via train, switch trains at Rome station. Generally what I recommend is to put your entire trip into Italiarail, and the connecting time that you'll get there are the real connecting times that are doable. They'll tell you how much time you have in Rome to transfer to Milan. Generally in the big stations, it's best to account for about 20 to 30 minutes minimum just to get, around the station. So that's what I would advise to choose for the quote unquote layover in the Rome station.
Okay, with the Rail Aid pass, do you have lounge access? Yes, so Rail Aid is you want to go ahead and answer?
No, go
I
for
know
it.
more about. I was just going to say we do have this product called Rail Aid, which is a traveler protection for rail passengers, and it does include access to the Italia Pass lounge at Rome Termini.
Yes.
This is about a SIM card. It says I bought a 10 gig 30-day card on Amazon for $28 Canadian. Rob is probably trying to help out the other person who was asking about SIM cards on the at the airport. So I will put that in our Q&A, but I guess you could look online on Amazon perhaps if you want to get a SIM card before you come on over.
What's easy is to also download an app. There are multiple apps on your phone that you can purchase a SIM card on and then install it. So that's something to look into in your app store. And can the destination be changed on a ticket from Termini to FCO? It really depends on the type of ticket that you take. From Termini to FCO, there would be no real incentive to change the direction just because FCO always pretty much goes to Termini. There are exceptions where it goes straight to Florence. And I think you can definitely change the destination before you checked in, but it might change the price of your ticket. So go to the booth if you have any issues and it's on the day of. If not, contact our Italiarail team because they're the experts in rail. If it's before you depart for your trip, contact us. If you're already on your trip, I always advise to go to the ticketing booth to ask the questions. Does everyone in my party need to, I'll take this one as well because it's Primo. Does everyone in my party need to be a Primo member to get to the lounge, or can they come with me? It's a great question. Recently, we launched a companion membership for $45, and that gives your companions that buy the membership access to the lounge, access to a free Coliseum ticket, and a bunch of other benefits. We can once you become a member, you do get the option. You'll see in your membership welcome email, you have access to that companion membership that you can purchase additionally for the people accompanying you.
Yeah, I think it's even available in our shopping cart now because we switched systems. So I think even at time of purchase, if you're already thinking you're not a member already and you want to add that when you purchase, you can also add that in. Okay, so we're going to take this last question. If you have any questions in your mind, you want to type them here in the last minutes, that's fine. The Zoom will save them for me and I can answer them offline. Does the Italia Primo SIM card work in Europe or only in Italy, and can you top it up? Do you want to take this? Because you've probably gotten questions about this from members in the past. Thanks.
Sure. So we used to offer the SIM card for Primo members. It's still applicable if you become a Primo member beforehand. And yes, they can be used in Europe, all over. And you can top it up. You just have to reach out to us and we'll do it for you. So you can either you can purchase an additional one, I believe still on the ItaliaPass app, but it's better to reach out to us. So reach out to our Primo team and we'll help you top it up.
Okay, thanks everyone for all your questions and thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful time in Rome. And if you have any more questions, you can also come over to the community and post them there and we'll answer them. And so be on the lookout for the email I'll be sending. Like I said, it will be no later than tomorrow and you'll have the links to all the things that we talked about.
Thank you, everyone.